homeless woman designs dresses using garbage bags, unaware that a millionaire CEO is watching her, and what he does next surprises everyone. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, which city are you watching from? And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. Emma Carter was sitting on the ground in the town square, her eyes steady, like someone who had lost a lot but never her dignity. In her hands, a needle made from a piece of wire. Around her, colorful plastic bags, torn ribbons, and strips of packaging were all carefully arranged, as if they were fine fabrics. Her fingers moved quickly, turning what most people would call trash into something almost magical. That's when Raphael Whitmore, CEO of one of the largest companies in the country, happened to walk by. He was lost in thought after a difficult meeting with investors when his eyes caught an unusual sight. A woman sewing plastic bags as if she were working with silk. He stopped, curious. He watched from a distance, quietly. He saw how she arranged the plastics in soft color gradients, with almost artistic precision. Nothing seemed random. There was intention in every move. Technique, yes, but more than that, instinct. A raw, rare talent, impossible to ignore. He stepped closer. Emma, feeling his gaze, looked up. She saw a man in an expensive suit standing still, watching her with interest. "Did you lose something?" she asked, without flinching. "No," he replied, surprised by her confidence. "I'm just admiring your work." "Work?" She raised an eyebrow. "This is just a way to stay sane, and it helps me forget I haven't eaten since yesterday." Raphael hesitated. Her words touched him more than he wanted to admit. "Can I ask what you're making?" "A dress," she said, without looking at him. "Or trying to, at least. These blue bags have a better texture. The green ones are too thin, they tear easily. The secret is the contrast." She added 2 more strong stitches, trimmed the excess with a small knife, and carefully held the piece up. It was stunning. The dress, despite the unusual materials, looked like it belonged on a fashion runway. The colors formed a soft gradient. The top had bold cuts, yet everything felt balanced. The finish was surprisingly clean. Raphael blinked a few times. "Wow. Wow," she laughed. "Is that all a guy in a suit can say when he sees something out of the ordinary?" "It's not every day you find talent like this, in the middle of a square," he said, still amazed. "Did you study fashion?" Emma paused. "I've studied a lot of things, but the streets teach faster. Out here, if you don't create, you don't survive." Raphael took a card from his pocket and handed it to her. "My name is Raphael Whitmore. Tomorrow night, there's an exhibit for new designers at the Montgomery Fashion Gallery. I want you to bring that dress." Emma looked at the card, then at him. "Let me guess? Another rich guy trying to feel good by helping a poor woman?" Raphael gave a slight smile. "No, I'm someone who just saw the most original dress in years. And I run a fashion company that's in desperate need of something alive." Emma looked at the card again, as if it belonged to another world. She bit her lower lip, thinking, "And if I show up there, will they even let me in?" "I'll be at the door waiting. You have my word." She studied his expression. For the first time in a long while, she saw someone who didn't look sorry for her, or afraid, just honest. "I don't have fancy clothes. Not even decent shoes. And I don't know how to talk to people up there. Just bring the dress. Nothing else matters." Emma took a deep breath and took the card. "All right, but if this turns out to be a joke, I'm good with a needle and I know where to aim." "Noted," he replied with a smile. "See you tomorrow, Emma." "See you tomorrow, Mr. Whitmore. Or should I call you sponsor of creative lunatics? I prefer discoverer of unlikely talent." They exchanged one last glance, and in that moment, without realizing it, destiny began to stitch together a story that would change everything. Emma gently placed the dress inside a recycled bag, sat back down on the ground, and looked at the card for a long while. "A talent exhibit, huh?" she murmured. "If only they knew. Talent was the one thing I never lost." On the other side of the square, Raphael stepped into his car with a strange feeling in his chest. He felt like he had just found something no business meeting had given him in years. Inspiration. The Montgomery Fashion Gallery glowed like a crystal palace in the heart of Manhattan. Golden lights reflected off polished marble floors as New York's elite walked around with glasses of French champagne and caviar hors d'oeuvres. Women wore jewelry worth more than most apartments, and men talked million-dollar deals between sips of aged scotch. Emma stopped at the entrance, holding her recycled bag with the dress inside. Her hair was tied loosely with a rubber band she had found on the street, and her clothes, a faded shirt and torn pants, stood out sharply against the luxury around her. A security guard looked her up and down. "Ma'am, are you sure you're in the right place?" Emma showed Raphael's card. "Raphael Whitmore invited me." The guard looked doubtful, but after checking the guest list, he let her in. As soon as Emma stepped inside, it was as if a glacier had swept through the room. Conversation stopped. Eyes turned. Whispers began. "Oh my, what is that smell?" whispered a woman in a Chanel dress, covering her nose with a silk scarf. "Did they invite the homeless for some kind of charity project?" asked another, adjusting her pearls. Emma took a deep breath and walked toward the exhibition area, ignoring the looks of disgust. Every step felt like silent torture, but she kept her head held high. Raphael saw her from across the room and made his way over, moving through the crowd. "Emma, you came," he said, clearly relieved. "A promise is a promise," she replied, trying to sound confident. "Where should I put this?" She pointed to the bag. Raphael guided her to a section reserved for participants. There were empty mannequins waiting for the designs, and other designers were already setting up their pieces, dresses from famous labels, tailored suits, and accessories worth small fortunes. Emma took her dress out of the bag and placed it on the assigned mannequin. The change was immediate. Even under the bright event lights, the dress came to life. The gradient colors of the plastic created a fascinating visual effect, and the cuts showed a level of skill that few in the room could match. But the crowd's reaction was instant and cruel. "Are you seeing this?" shouted a man in a bow tie. "That's actual trash. Modern art has gone too far," added a blonde woman, shaking her head in disapproval. "Someone needs to stop this nonsense," said another guest. "It's insulting to the real artists here." Emma felt her cheeks burn, but she didn't move. She stood beside her mannequin like a silent guardian, as the crowd surrounded her with increasingly harsh remarks. "She really thought this counted as fashion?" laughed a young socialite. "She probably pulled it out of a dumpster," her date added. Raphael watched from a distance, fists clenched. He wanted to step in, but he knew it would only make things worse for Emma. He had to trust the process. The event host, a well-dressed man with silver hair, stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're ready to begin the official judging. Each piece will be evaluated based on technical skill, creativity, and visual impact." The panel consisted of 5 judges. Raphael, the editor-in-chief of Fashion Elite magazine, a well-known fashion designer, an art critic, and a wealthy collector. One by one, the designs were presented. Classic dresses received polite applause. Bold creations sparked technical commentary. When it was Emma's turn, the silence was deafening. The editor-in-chief wrinkled her nose. "This is certainly original, but sustainable fashion shouldn't mean literally using trash." The fashion designer shook his head. "Technically, the cuts are interesting, but the material is questionable." The art critic adjusted her glasses. "There's a clear social message, but I'm not sure this is the right setting for it." The collector was blunt. "I wouldn't spend a dime on this." Raphael stood up. "With all due respect to my fellow judges, you're only seeing the material," Raphael said. "Forget the plastic for a moment and look at the construction, the proportions, the color balance, the texture innovation. Technically speaking, this is the most sophisticated piece we've seen today." "Raphael, you can't be serious," said the editor-in-chief. "I'm absolutely serious. And beyond that, how many of us truly care about sustainability? This woman is turning waste into art. If that's not innovation, I don't know what is." The other judges exchanged surprised glances, but Raphael held his ground. After a heated discussion behind the scenes, the votes were counted. The host returned to the stage holding a sealed envelope. "And the winner of tonight's Technical Innovation Award is entry number 7. Emma's eyes widened. Her number was 7. The crowd was stunned. Some clapped out of politeness, others remained completely silent, and many began murmuring in protest. "This has to be a bad joke," someone shouted from the audience. Emma walked to the stage with shaky legs. The weight of hundreds of eyes on her felt overwhelming, but she reached the host. When he handed her the golden trophy, Emma tried to speak, but no words came. The world began to spin. She had completely forgotten she hadn't eaten in 3 days. Her legs gave out. The trophy slipped from her hands and hit the stage with a loud metallic sound. Emma collapsed in front of 300 people. The room fell into total silence. Raphael jumped from his seat at the judge's table and rushed to the stage, reaching her before anyone else. He knelt beside Emma and held her up. Emma, can you hear me?" She mumbled something he couldn't understand. Raphael noticed how thin, pale, and cold she was. "When was the last time you ate?" he asked quietly. Tuesday, she whispered. Raphael did the math quickly. Tuesday. And it was now Friday night. 3 days? He asked, stunned. Emma just nodded, ashamed. Raphael turned to the crowd, still watching in silence. "Someone call an ambulance. Right now." At that moment, a photographer from Fashion Weekly, who had been sitting in the front row, suddenly stood up. He adjusted the lens on his camera and looked closely at Emma. His eyes grew wide. "Wait a minute," he murmured, pulling an old photo from his wallet. He compared the image to Emma's face. Even underweight, with messy hair and humble clothes, there was something unmistakable in those eyes, in the way she held a needle. The photographer jumped to his feet, nearly dropping his camera. "People," he shouted to the entire gallery. "Don't you see who this is? Isn't this the famous ES who vanished 3 years ago?" The entire room froze. Every conversation stopped at once. It was as if someone had pressed the pause button on the world. The editor-in-chief of Fashion Elite turned pale as a sheet. "ES? The designer who disappeared after the scandal? The one who had that $1 million brand?" asked the collector in disbelief. "Santos Couture," whispered the art critic. "She was a genius, disappeared overnight." The photographer nodded vigorously. "It's her. I photographed ES dozens of times. You never forget hands like those. Look at the way she holds the needle." Raphael looked down at Emma, still semi-conscious in his arms, then back at the crowd, who now stared at her with a mix of shock, curiosity, and maybe even respect. The homeless woman who had just collapsed from hunger on the stage of the Montgomery Fashion Gallery was, in truth, one of the greatest legends of modern fashion. And no one had any idea how she had ended up there. The sound of an ambulance siren echoed through the streets of Manhattan, but inside the gallery, the only thing anyone could hear was the racing heartbeat of 300 people trying to process the most shocking revelation this elite had ever witnessed. Raphael looked at Emma and whispered, "Who are you really?" But she had already passed out again, leaving the question hanging in the air, like a needle waiting to stitch together the pieces of a story no one yet knew. Mount Sinai Hospital was quiet in the stillness of New York's early morning hours. Raphael walked the white halls with a cold cup of coffee in his hand, waiting for news for more than 2 hours. A nurse had told him that Emma was stable, just dehydrated and malnourished, but needed rest. When they finally allowed him into the room, he found Emma sitting up in bed, looking out the window at the city lights. She looked smaller there, more vulnerable, but her eyes still held the determination he had first seen in the square. "How are you feeling?" Raphael asked, walking toward her slowly. "Better," she answered without turning to him. "Thank you for bringing me here." "No need to thank me. Anyone would have done the same." Emma let out a bitter laugh. "No, Raphael. Most people would walk right past a homeless woman who fainted in the street. You're not most people." Raphael pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. A quiet pause settled between them, filled with questions left unspoken. "Emma," he began carefully, "that photographer at the gallery, he said you're ES, the designer who vanished 3 years ago." Emma closed her eyes and took a long breath. "And do you believe him?" "I don't know what to believe, but I do know a regular woman on the street doesn't sew like that, doesn't have that kind of technique, doesn't create something so flawless." "Flawless?" She turned to him with a faint, sad smile. "Raphael, you saw my dress made out of trash, if that's what you call flawless. Just imagine what I used to be able to create." Her words hung in the air, like a quiet confession never meant to be said out loud. Raphael leaned forward. "So it's true? You really are ES?" Emma looked down at her hands, rough and marked by life on the streets. "ES died 3 years ago, Raphael. The woman you met in the square is just Emma. A woman who learned to survive by turning trash into art because she had nothing left. But people are still looking for you. Your brand, Santos Couture, is still remembered as revolutionary. What happened? Emma's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Some secrets are too heavy to carry and too painful to share. Try to trust me. Emma looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing how much she could believe in his words. One day you'll know everything, Raphael. But right now, I don't want to talk about it. It hurts too much to remember who I was before I lost everything. Raphael respected her silence, but his curiosity only grew. There were layers to this woman he was only beginning to uncover. Can I ask you something different then? Emma nodded. What do you want to do now? I mean, after you leave here? Go back to the square, I guess. That's where I live. What if I offered you an alternative? Emma raised an eyebrow. What kind of alternative? Raphael took a deep breath. He had made the decision during those 2 long hours in the hallway. I want you to work with me, as the head designer at Montgomery Fashion. Emma's eyes widened. You're serious? Completely serious. I saw what you can do with materials other people throw away. Just imagine what you could create with real resources. Raphael, you don't know me. You know nothing about my past, I know you have extraordinary talent. I know you're brave. I know you don't give up, and I know my company needs someone like you. Emma shook her head, still in disbelief. You're offering a job to a homeless woman who fainted from hunger in the middle of an exhibition? I'm offering an opportunity to the most talented woman I've ever met. Tears finally began to fall down Emma's cheeks. Why do you believe in me when no one else does? Raphael stood up and walked toward the window, looking out at the city that never sleeps. You know what the difference is between you and all those famous designers at the gallery last night? What? They create fashion to impress. You create it to survive. And that makes all the difference. Emma wiped her tears with the hospital sheet. What if I say yes and let you down? What if you say yes and change everything? They looked at each other for a moment that felt endless. In Raphael, Emma saw something she had lost long ago. Hope. In Emma, Raphael saw something his company had lost. Soul. I need to think, she said finally. Of course. But Emma, he turned back to her before leaving, sometimes life gives us a second chance when we least expect it. The question is, do you have the courage to take it? After Raphael left, Emma was alone with her thoughts. Through the window, she could see Manhattan still moving, even in the middle of the night. People coming and going, each one with their own dreams and their own struggles. She thought about the square where she had spent the last few months. She thought about the dress made of trash she had created. She thought about the way Raphael looked at her when he saw her sewing. And for the first time in 3 years, Emma Santos, who had once been the most promising designer of her generation, allowed herself to imagine that maybe, just maybe, there was still a second chance waiting for her. Outside the hospital room, Raphael walked the hallway with his phone in hand, already planning how he would convince the board to approve his boldest decision yet. Because he was sure of one thing: Emma wasn't just getting a second chance. He was, too. 3 days later, Emma stood in front of Montgomery Tower. She adjusted the simple blouse she had found at a thrift store, the only decent piece she could afford with the $20 left from the exhibition prize. Her hair was tied back in a loose bun, and she carried a fabric bag with her few belongings. You can do this, she whispered to herself, taking a deep breath before pushing open the glass doors of the lobby. The entrance hall was overwhelming. Italian marble, crystal chandeliers, and a central fountain created an atmosphere of wealth Emma hadn't seen in years. Executives in expensive suits walked by quickly, talking on their phones about million-dollar deals. At the front desk, a middle-aged blonde woman looked at her with clear disapproval. Her nameplate read, Priscilla Monroe, Executive Assistant. May I help you? Priscilla asked in a tone that suggested the exact opposite. I'm Emma Carter. I'm starting in the design department. Raphael Whitmore is expecting me. Priscilla looked her up and down, making sure to show her disapproval. You must be mistaken. Mr. Whitmore doesn't hire people like you. People like me? Emma kept her voice steady, but her eyes sparkled with fire. Look, dear, this is a professional workplace. You might be looking for the Community Help Center. It's 3 blocks down. At that moment, Raphael stepped out of the elevator and saw Emma in the lobby. Emma, it's great to see you. He turned to the receptionist. "Priscilla, this is our new head designer. Please get her a full access badge." Priscilla's expression changed instantly to a forced smile. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore." Right away, while they waited for the badge, Emma heard whispers coming from different directions. "She's the homeless woman who won the award. I heard she sews with trash. Do you think she's working for free? She's probably used to it." Raphael noticed Emma's discomfort and quickly guided her toward the elevator. "Ignore them. In a few days, they'll be begging to learn your tricks." On the 35th floor, the elevator doors opened to reveal the design department of Montgomery Fashion. It was a large, modern space, filled with workstations equipped with high-end computers, professional cutting tables, and mannequins spread throughout. "This will be your space," Raphael said, showing her a workstation in the center of the room. Emma looked around, trying to take it all in. The space was impressive, but also overwhelming. Everything was so clean, organized, expensive. "Where are the restrooms?" she asked, a bit embarrassed. "At the end of the hallway, to the left. Need help finding them?" "No, thank you. I just want to freshen up a bit." Emma headed off toward the restroom but got lost in the identical hallways. She passed meeting rooms, other departments, and even ended up on the wrong floor. By the time she found her way back, 15 minutes had gone by. The design team was already gathered around her workstation, whispering among themselves. There were 5 of them, 3 women and 2 men, all dressed perfectly, with skeptical expressions. "Everyone, this is Emma Carter, our new head designer," Raphael announced. A woman with red hair and designer glasses stepped forward. "I'm Helena Davidson, creative director. I heard about your work at the exhibition." The tone of her voice made it clear that work wasn't meant as a compliment. "Nice to meet you all," Emma replied. A young man with a neatly trimmed beard crossed his arms. "Marcus Thompson, senior designer. I'm curious to see how your alternative techniques will match our quality standards." Emma immediately sensed that earning this team's respect wouldn't be easy. Raphael turned to her. "I'll let you all get to know each other. Emma, feel free to explore the space and let me know if you need anything." As soon as Raphael walked away, the atmosphere grew noticeably colder. Helena stepped closer with a forced smile. "So Emma, tell us about your background. Where did you study? Which brands have you worked with?" "I learned by doing. On the streets." Marcus gave a quiet laugh. "On the streets? How interesting. And what kind of clients did you serve? On the streets?" Emma felt her blood boil but kept her composure. "The kind who need creative solutions with limited resources." "I see," Helena said. "Well, here we work with top-quality materials, imported silks, Italian leather, Swarovski crystals. We don't exactly have trash to recycle." The others chuckled quietly. Emma looked around the office and noticed several waste bins filled with expensive fabric scraps, crumpled sketches, and unused samples. "Actually," she said, walking toward one of the bins, "you throw away more useful material here than most people see in an entire year." She picked up some scraps of blue silk, pieces of French lace, and leftovers from a metallic fabric. "Can I use this?" "That's trash," Marcus said. "Leftovers from old projects." "Perfect." Emma walked over to her workstation and began examining the discarded materials. Within minutes, she had sorted the fabrics by texture and color, creating a harmonious palette. Helena watched, still skeptical. "What exactly do you plan to make with that?" "Something you've never seen before," Emma replied, already cutting the fabric with surgical precision. Over the next 4 hours, Emma worked in complete silence. Her fingers moved with a speed and precision that mesmerized anyone watching. She sewed everything by hand, no machine, using tiny, flawless stitches. At first, the team made fun of her eco-hippie techniques, but little by little, they began moving closer to get a better look. "What kind of stitch is that?" asked one of the younger designers, clearly fascinated. "It's an adaptation of the French stitch, but reinforced to handle more tension," Emma explained, without stopping. "I've never seen anything like it," Marcus murmured, genuinely impressed. When Emma finally stepped back from the table, she had created a dress that left the entire team in silence. It was an asymmetrical piece that combined the fabric scraps so perfectly, it looked like it had been designed that way from the beginning. The metallic parts reflected light in shifting patterns, and the lace details added a surprising delicacy. "Impossible," Helena whispered. How did you make this in 4 hours? 5 years living on the streets teach you not to waste anything, Emma answered simply. Just then, Raphael returned to the department to see how Emma was settling in. When he saw the dress, he stopped in the doorway and stood still for several seconds. Emma, he said, walking toward her slowly. This is extraordinary. It's just a test, she replied modestly. A test? You did more in 1 day than they've done in a month, Raphael said, glancing at the team, who remained quiet. Helena tried to protest. Raphael, it's just an experimental piece. Helena, this is the most innovative piece I've seen come out of this department in years, Raphael interrupted, and it was made from leftovers. Emma felt her cheeks flush at the compliment. Now I need to show you our computer system, Raphael said. Come with me. He led her to a high-end computer. Emma looked at the screen as if it came from another planet. I don't know much about computers, she admitted. Don't worry. It's easier than it looks. Raphael stood behind her, placing his hands gently over hers on the keyboard. The closeness gave Emma a chill that had nothing to do with the office air conditioning. First, you click here to open the design software, he said, his voice close to her ear. Emma tried to focus on the instructions, but she was acutely aware of the warmth of his body behind hers, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way his large hands gently guided hers. Now you can draw directly on the screen, Raphael continued, guiding her fingers over the mouse. When he leaned in closer to show her a specific feature, their faces were just inches apart. They looked at each other for a moment that felt endless, and Emma felt her heart start to race. I think I'm getting the hang of it, she whispered. You pick things up very quickly, he replied, not stepping back. The tension between them was unmistakable. Emma could feel that Raphael was just as affected by the closeness as she was. A soft cough broke the moment. They quickly moved apart. Helena was standing next to the desk, her expression unreadable. Raphael, the board is looking for you, she said, her tone slightly sharp. Of course, Raphael straightened up. Emma, if you need any help, Helena can guide you. Right, Helena? Certainly, Helena replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. After Raphael left, Emma was alone with the team, but the atmosphere had shifted. The dress she had created stood as silent proof of her talent, and the moment she had shared with the boss had not gone unnoticed. Emma looked out the window on the 35th floor, seeing the city stretch out to the horizon. For the first time in 3 years, she felt something she had forgotten, hope, and something else she didn't dare name. But that warmed her chest whenever she thought of Raphael's eyes so close to hers. On the rooftop of a skyscraper in the Upper East Side, Veronica Blackwell was sipping French champagne when a news segment caught her attention. The screen showed Emma receiving the award at the Montgomery Fashion Gallery, with the caption, Mysterious Designer Wins Over New York Elite with Sustainable Fashion. Veronica nearly dropped her glass. Impossible, she murmured, turning up the volume. The reporter continued. The winner, identified only as Emma Carter, created a sensation with a dress made entirely of recycled materials. Some present speculate she might be the legendary ES who vanished mysteriously 3 years ago. Veronica felt her blood boil. There was Emma Santos, her former best friend, her ex-partner, the woman whose life she had carefully destroyed. Back in the world, Veronica now ruled. She walked over to her mahogany desk and picked up the phone, dialing quickly. Marcus? This is Veronica Blackwell. I need you to run an urgent article. Yes, about Emma Santos. She's back. In the following days, Veronica called every influential journalist she knew, every fashion magazine editor, every credible blogger. Emma Santos is a fugitive criminal, she said with a sweet but poisonous voice. Of course, she's hiding behind a false identity. The woman has serious mental problems. Did you see where she was living? On the streets. She's obviously unstable. Within 48 hours, the first headline started appearing online. Fugitive designer hides as homeless woman in NYC. ES, or an imposter? The truth about the woman who fooled the elite. Reliable source reveals Emma Santos suffers from severe mental disorder. At Montgomery Tower, Raphael was in his office when his secretary, Priscilla, entered looking visibly nervous. Mr. Whitmore, we have a problem. Clients are calling to cancel their orders. Cancel? Why? Because of the new employee, Emma Carter. They're saying she's, well, a criminal. Raphael frowned. What are you talking about? Priscilla handed him a tablet with several articles open. It's all over the fashion gossip sites. They say she's Emma Santos, a designer who disappeared 3 years ago after a money laundering scandal. Raphael quickly read through the articles, feeling a mix of shock and anger rise in his chest. Where is Emma now? In the design department, sir. Raphael went down to the 35th floor with determined steps. He found Emma quietly working on a new piece, seemingly unaware of the storm gathering around her. The design team whispered from across the room, casting curious glances her way. Emma, I need to speak with you, privately. She looked up and immediately saw the tension in his face. Is something wrong? Raphael led her to his private office and closed the door. Emma, I need the truth, all of it, right now. She slowly sat down in the chair across from his desk. About what? Raphael opened the tablet and showed her the articles. About this, about who you really are, about what happened 3 years ago. Emma looked at the headlines and her face turned pale. Her hand started to tremble slightly. I knew this day would come, she said quietly. Is it true? Are you really Emma Santos? Emma took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, I am. And the accusations? Money laundering? Did you run from the law? Tears began to form in Emma's eyes. Raphael, do you really want to hear the whole truth? Because once I tell you, there's no turning back. I need to know. Emma stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. 3 years ago, I was Emma Santos, known as ES in the fashion world. I was 25 years old, and my brand, Santos Couture, was worth $50 million. I was considered the most promising designer of my generation. She paused, as if each word was painful to say. I was married to James Mitchell, a successful businessman, or at least I thought he was successful. And my best friend and business partner was Veronica Blackwell. We'd been friends since college. I trusted her more than anyone in the world. Raphael listened quietly, noticing the real pain in her voice. Veronica handled the financial side of the company while I focused on the creative work. I signed documents without reading them carefully because I trusted her completely. That was my mistake. What happened? Veronica had been stealing money from the company for over a year. She forged my signature on documents, opened fake bank accounts in my name, and when she found out an audit was coming, she accused me of money laundering. Emma sat down again, tears now falling freely. She had documents, Raphael. Documents with my signature, even if forged, that made it look like I was moving money to offshore accounts. She planted evidence on my computer, in my office. When the police showed up, it looked like I was guilty. And your husband? Emma gave a bitter laugh. James left me on the second day of the scandal, said he couldn't risk his reputation by being tied to a criminal. I later found out he and Veronica had been having an affair for months. Raphael felt a deep anger rise in his chest. The media destroyed me. Every day there was a new headline saying I had betrayed my investors' trust, that I was a fraud, a liar. My clients left. Suppliers canceled contracts. Within 2 weeks, Santos Couture had collapsed. And the lawyers I hired took the last of my savings and barely did anything. When the money ran out, they left me too. I was alone. No resources, no company, no friends, and no family who believed in me. Emma wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Veronica kept everything. The company, the clients, even my apartment, because she managed to prove I had bought it with dirty money. She changed the name to Blackwell Empire, and today it's one of the most respected brands in New York. And you ended up on the streets. Not right away. I first tried to rebuild my life in other cities, but my reputation followed me. No one would hire me, not even to work in a department store. The name Emma Santos had become a symbol of fraud in the fashion industry. She paused, breathing with difficulty. Eventually, I ran out of money. I couldn't pay rent, couldn't find work. One thing led to another and, well, you know the rest. Raphael stood up and walked over to her, kneeling beside the chair. Emma, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for everything you've been through. The worst part, she continued, is that Veronica was right about one thing. I really did become unstable. There were moments when I questioned my own sanity. Had I really done all that? Was I truly the monster everyone said I was? You're not a monster. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Emma looked at him in surprise. How can you say that? You don't even know me that well. I know enough. You survived 3 years on the streets and still kept your humanity, your talent, your ability to create beauty. That's not something a monster does. Raphael, if you keep me here, you'll destroy your company. Veronica won't stop until she sees me ruined again. Raphael stood up and took her hands. Then let's give her a fight she didn't expect. I'll help you get back on your feet, Emma, and we're going to prove your innocence. Just then, Priscilla knocked on the door urgently. Mr. Whitmore? There are some people here insisting on speaking with Miss Emma. Raphael and Emma exchanged tense looks. Who is it? A woman named Veronica Blackwell. She's here with lawyers. Emma's blood ran cold. She's here. Raphael squeezed her hands. You're not alone this time. They went down to the lobby, where Veronica was waiting with 2 men in suits. She hadn't changed much in 3 years, still blonde, elegant, and wearing a smile that never reached her eyes. When she saw Emma, her smile widened. Emma, darling, she said in a sugary voice. What a surprise to find you here. Still dressing in garbage, I see. Emma felt old wounds tear open, but Raphael stepped forward. Miss Blackwell, this is a private workplace. If you have something to discuss, you can schedule a meeting through the proper channels. Veronica laughed. Oh, how charming. Emma has found herself a protector. She turned directly to Emma. Do you really think you can hide forever, dear? Changed your last name to Carter, but you can't change who you are. A runaway criminal. I'm not a criminal, Emma said, finding strength in her voice. And you know that better than anyone. Oh, do I? Veronica feigned surprise. I know you stole millions from our investors. I know you destroyed the trust of dozens of people. And now you're trying to fool this poor man too. Raphael stepped forward, clearly angry. That's enough. Leave. Now. Veronica looked at him with disdain. Mr. Whitmore, is it? You should be thanking me for coming here in person to warn you. This woman will destroy your company just like she destroyed mine. That's what she does. She ruins the people who trust her. Emma felt tears burn in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. The only thing I ruined was my own life, because I trusted you. How dramatic, Veronica laughed. You've always been like this, haven't you? Always the victim. Well, dear, it won't work this time. Everyone already knows who you really are. The confrontation could have gone on longer, but Raphael called security, and Veronica was escorted out, not before throwing one last venomous glance at Emma. This isn't over, Emma. When the elevator doors closed, Emma collapsed into a chair in the lobby, trembling. Raphael knelt beside her. It's okay. She's gone. It's not okay, Emma whispered. She's right about one thing. I'm going to destroy your company. I'll destroy you too. Look at me, Raphael said, lifting her chin. The only thing that's going to be destroyed here is the lie she built, I promise. Emma looked into his eyes and saw something she hadn't seen in 3 years. Someone who truly believed in her. Meanwhile, outside the building, Veronica climbed into her limousine with a satisfied smile. The next day, Emma was in the Montgomery Tower studio, putting the final touches on her collection for the Fashion Week show happening in 48 hours. 5 revolutionary pieces were displayed on mannequins, each representing a stage of transformation, from destruction to renewal, from waste to luxury. It was 2 a.m. when she finally decided to go home. The show would be her chance to prove to the world that Emma Santos hadn't just survived, she had come back stronger. Tomorrow's going to be perfect, she murmured to herself, turning off the lights in the studio. Outside the building, Veronica watched through the limousine window. She had bribed 2 security guards with $10,000 each to give her access after hours. 50 minutes, she told the driver. No more than that. At 3 a.m, Veronica entered the studio holding a pair of professional scissors. One by one, she systematically destroyed each piece of Emma's collection. Precise cuts ruined months of work. Fabrics torn, embroidery unraveled, structures broken. When she was done, the studio looked like a textile battlefield. Emma arrived the next morning with coffee in hand and a hopeful smile. What she found made her fall to her knees among the wreckage. No, 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 she repeated, picking up shredded pieces of fabric. In 3 years living on the streets, Emma had never cried. Not when she was hungry, not when she was humiliated, not even when she slept in the cold. But now, seeing her dreams literally in pieces, the tears came like a storm. Raphael arrived an hour later and found Emma sitting on the floor, holding the remains of a dress in her arms. My God, Emma, what happened here? She destroyed everything, Emma sobbed. Veronica destroyed everything. I have nothing left for the show. Raphael knelt beside her, feeling a kind of anger he had never known before. Then we'll rebuild. Raphael, there are 40 hours until the show. It's impossible. Nothing is impossible. Raphael picked up the phone and called every employee in the company, canceling all time off and scheduling an emergency meeting. Within an hour, the entire design department was in the studio, along with assistants, interns, and even members of the cleaning staff. Everyone, Raphael announced, we're going to help Emma create the most incredible collection New York has ever seen, in 36 hours. Helena, who had become a reluctant ally, stepped forward. What do we need to do? Emma wiped away her tears and stood up. We need trash. A lot of it. Plastics, discarded fabrics, anything we can transform. Marcus laughed. You want us to go around the city looking for trash? Exactly. And so began the most unusual operation in New York fashion history. Teams spread across Manhattan, searching for recyclable materials in dumpsters, recycling centers, and even asking fabric stores for donations. Emma worked for 30 straight hours, stopping only to drink water and eat the sandwiches the team brought her. Her hands flew across the sewing machine, creating miracles with what others would call garbage. Colored plastic bags were transformed into ethereal tulle. Old newspapers became architectural structures. Melted plastic bottles created textures no one had ever seen. On the day of the show, the Lincoln Center was packed with the global fashion elite. Critics, buyers, celebrities, all waiting to see if the legend of ES was real or just an urban myth. Veronica sat in the front row, confident that Emma would have nothing to show. The lights dimmed. The music started. The first model appeared, wearing a dress made entirely of blue plastic bags that floated like water. The audience went silent. The second piece was a structured coat made of varnished newspapers that looked like high-end leather. The third model walked out in an evening gown made of transparent plastic bottles, creating a crystal effect under the lights. The fourth piece was a set made from discarded fabrics, forming a breathtaking mosaic of colors. And then came the final piece, a wedding dress made entirely from materials that symbolized rebirth. Paper butterflies, plastic flowers, a train that looked like it was constantly transforming. When Emma appeared at the end of the show, the silence turned into a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Critics stood up. Camera flashes went off. A fashion revolution, shouted the editor from Vogue. Emma Santos has redefined sustainability, declared the Times critic. Veronica watched from the audience, her face red with anger, seeing her revenge turn into Emma's greatest triumph. After the show, Raphael found Emma backstage, still in shock from the success. You did it, he said, smiling. We did it, she corrected. Would you have dinner with me, to celebrate? Emma paused for a moment, then smiled. I'd love to. They had dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Soho, away from the spotlight and the hustle of Fashion Week. The conversation flowed naturally, with laughter and stories, as if they were old friends. Thank you, Emma said when they finished dessert, for believing in me when no one else did. Thank you for reminding me why I fell in love with fashion. Raphael replied. When he took her to the small apartment the company had rented for her, they stopped at the door and looked at each other intensely. Emma, Raphael began, stepping closer. Raphael, she whispered, moving closer too. Their faces were inches apart. Emma could feel his breath, see the intensity in his eyes. The moment was full of all the tension and attraction that had grown between them. They moved even closer. But then Emma pulled back slightly. Maybe we should take it slow, she said, her voice trembling. Raphael nodded, understanding. You're right. Good night, Emma. Good night, Raphael. She entered the apartment with her heart racing, knowing something between them had changed forever. Outside, Raphael stood still for a moment, smiling to himself. Meanwhile, in her penthouse, Veronica was breaking crystal glasses against the wall, planning her next move. The war was far from over. But for the first time in 3 years, Emma Santos went to sleep with a smile, knowing she had proven that miracles can rise from ashes, and that maybe, just maybe, she could find love again. 3 days after the huge success of the show, Emma was organizing her new studio when she heard familiar voices coming from Raphael's office. Curious, She approached the half-open door and saw an elegant woman with brown hair talking excitedly with him. "Rafa, I'm so proud of you," the woman said. "Emma's collection was revolutionary. You made the right choice." Emma froze. She recognized that face and voice immediately. Impossible to forget. 5 years earlier, Emma was returning from the studio when she saw a runaway car heading straight toward a distracted woman crossing the street, talking on her phone. Without thinking twice, Emma ran and pushed the woman out of the car's path, saving her life. The woman had thanked her emotionally, but Emma left quickly without giving her name. It was Margaret Whitmore, Raphael's sister. Emma's heart sank. Everything suddenly made devastating sense. Raphael hadn't helped her because of her talent. He had known who she was from the very first moment in the park. He knew she had saved Margaret. With trembling legs, Emma knocked on the door. "Raphael, can I talk to you?" "Of course." He opened the door with a smile. "Emma, this is my sister Margaret. Margaret, this is Emma Santos, the extraordinary designer I've told you so much about." Margaret smiled warmly. "It's a pleasure to officially meet you, Emma. Rafa can't stop talking about you." Emma forced a smile, but her eyes stayed fixed on Raphael. "I need to talk to you, in private." Margaret noticed the tension. "I'll leave you two to talk." "It was a pleasure, Emma." Once they were alone, Emma crossed her arms. "How long have you known?" "Known what?" Raphael looked genuinely confused. "That I saved your sister 5 years ago. That's why you helped me, right? Out of gratitude." Raphael's eyes widened. "Emma, what are you talking about?" "Don't pretend you don't know. Margaret is the woman I saved from an accident 5 years ago. You recognized me in the park and decided to return the favor." Raphael shook his head strongly. "Emma, I swear I didn't know. Margaret never told me the name of the person who saved her. She only said a brave woman risked her life to save her." "You expect me to believe that?" Raphael stepped closer to her. "Emma, look at me. If I had known you saved my sister, do you think I would have let you live on the streets for 3 years? I would have moved heaven and earth to find you." Emma studied his face, searching for signs of a lie. "So why did you help me?" Raphael took her hands. "Because the moment I saw you in the park creating art with your own hands, I saw something special. And every day since, I've fallen more in love with the strong, talented, and resilient woman you've become." "Raphael, I fell in love with you, Emma. Not the woman who saved my sister, not the legendary ES, but you. The woman who turns trash into beauty, who never gives up, who has the kindest heart I've ever known." Tears began to well up in Emma's eyes. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." He leaned in and gently touched her face. "May I kiss you?" Emma nodded, and their lips met in a soft, emotional kiss. In that moment, all doubts and fears disappeared. "Would you like to walk with me?" Raphael asked when they parted. They walked to Central Park, talking and laughing like a couple in love. When a light rain started, instead of looking for shelter, they stopped and stood in the rain. "Emma," Raphael said, pulling her closer. "I love you." "I love you too," she whispered. And there, under the gentle New York rain, they kissed again. This time, without hurry or doubt, just two hearts that had found home in each other. The next day, Raphael was in his office when the private detective he had hired knocked on the door. "Mr. Whitmore, I have important information about Veronica Blackwell." Raphael straightened in his chair. "Did you find something?" The detective opened a folder full of documents. "I found enough evidence to charge Veronica with fraud, forgery, and money laundering. She systematically forged Emma Santos's signatures and created a complex network of fake bank accounts." Raphael reviewed the documents, feeling a mix of relief and anger. "Is this enough to clear Emma's name?" "More than enough. Veronica Blackwell is the real criminal. Emma Santos is completely innocent." Raphael smiled for the first time in days. "Prepare everything to present to the authorities. And detective?" "Yes, sir." "Excellent work." After the detective left, Raphael picked up the phone to call Emma. He finally had the proof that would clear her name and allow her to rebuild her life. The truth was finally coming out. Madison Square Garden had been transformed into a sustainable fashion arena. Flags from 50 countries hung from the ceiling, while a crowd of designers, investors, and fashion critics gathered to watch the Green Fashion Global competition, the world's most prestigious event in eco-friendly fashion. Emma nervously adjusted her recycled blazer as she watched the final competitors. She had made it this far after beating over 1,000 candidates worldwide. Now, only 5 designers remained, competing for the $10 million prize. Ladies and gentlemen, the host announced, each finalist will have 6 hours to create a revolutionary piece using only sustainable materials provided by the organization. The winner will be chosen based on innovation, environmental impact, and commercial viability. Emma was led to her workstation, where she found piles of organic materials, recycled fabrics, and dried seaweed. Her eyes lit up. For weeks, she had secretly experimented with biocompounds made from seaweed, trying to create a fabric that was both luxurious and fully biodegradable. "Perfect," she whispered, picking up the seaweed. Across the arena, Dmitry Volkov, a Russian designer known for his aggressive techniques, watched Emma with calculated interest. He had heard rumors about her biotech experiments. "Victor," he whispered to his assistant, "I need to know exactly what that American is doing." While Emma worked, she began the process of turning seaweed into textile fibers. She mixed seaweed extracts with natural polymers, creating a viscous paste that would later be processed into threads. The technique was revolutionary, something she had developed during nights at the shelter, using makeshift equipment in a community college lab that stayed open 24 hours. 2 hours passed. Emma was so focused she didn't notice Victor sneaking up to her workstation with a small hidden camera, photographing her formulas and notes. "Interesting technique," commented Anastasia Chen, the Chinese designer at the next station. "I've never seen anyone process seaweed like that." "It's an experiment," Emma replied modestly, not wanting to reveal years of research. But Dmitry had heard enough. He quickly returned to his station and began to replicate Emma's process, using the photos Victor had taken. By the 3rd hour, Emma noticed Dmitry using a technique suspiciously similar to hers. "Raphael," she whispered when he passed by during a judge's inspection, "I think someone is copying my work." Raphael watched quietly and saw Dmitry handling seaweed the same way Emma did. "Do you have proof?" "My formula is protected by a provisional patent. If he's using it, he's violating intellectual property." Raphael nodded to one of the organizers and reported the situation. A discreet investigation began, but the competition couldn't be stopped. Emma decided the best defense was a fence. Instead of making just one fabric, she developed 3 variations: one that changed color with temperature, another that could self-repair when damaged, and a third that was naturally antibacterial. By the 5th hour, while the other contestants struggled to finish their creations, Emma was sewing a dress that looked like it came from a sea fairy tale. The seaweed fabric had a flowing texture that reminded one of running water, with iridescent reflections that changed with the light. "Time's up," the host announced. The 5 finalists presented their creations to a panel of judges made up of sustainable fashion icons, green technology investors, and environmental NGO representatives. The first contestant showed clothes made from pineapple fiber, an interesting technique but limited. The second used pieces made from cultivated mushrooms, innovative but with questionable commercial appeal. Anastasia Chen, surprised with clothes made from chicken feathers discarded by the food industry, transformed into luxurious fabrics. Dmitry presented his version of the seaweed fabrics, but the judges immediately noticed it was an inferior copy. "Mr. Volkov," said the head judge, "your technique is interesting, but it seems familiar. Can you explain the development process?" Dmitry stammered, clearly not fully understanding what he had copied. "It's a traditional Russian process, adapted for modern seaweed." Emma hid a smile. It was obvious he couldn't explain it because he hadn't developed the technique. Finally, it was her turn. "Honorable judges," Emma began, "I present the future of sustainable fashion, biotech fabrics derived from seaweed that are not only fully biodegradable but offer functional properties impossible to replicate with traditional materials." She demonstrated how the fabric changed from blue to green when heated, how small cuts closed themselves within minutes, and how it stayed fresh and odor-free even after hours of use. "This process," she continued, "can be replicated using seaweed grown on aquafarms, creating a textile industry that actually improves the environment instead of harming it." The jury was silent for a long moment, examining the dress and testing its extraordinary properties. After 2 hours of deliberation, the head of the jury returned to the stage. The decision was unanimous. The winner of Green Fashion Global, with the most revolutionary creation we've ever seen, is Emma Santos from the United States. The crowd erupted in applause. Emma could hardly believe it. $10 million in worldwide recognition as a pioneer in biotech fabrics. Raphael ran onto the stage and hugged her. "You did it. You really did it." "We did it," she corrected, kissing him in front of thousands. But the celebration was short-lived. The next day, Emma was in her new lab when Raphael arrived with a serious look. "We have a problem," he said, closing the door. "What kind of problem?" "The Montgomery board found out about your past from the competition coverage. They want an emergency meeting." In the conference room, Emma faced 12 stern faces, the most traditional members of the Montgomery Fashion Board. "Miss Santos," said the board president, a 70-year-old man named Theodore Montgomery III, "we are very concerned about the revelations regarding your criminal history." "Mr. Montgomery, the charges against me were fabricated. We have evidence." "We don't care about your innocence," interrupted another member. "We care about our reputation. Montgomery Fashion has served the conservative elite for 4 generations. We cannot be linked to scandals." Raphael stood up. "Gentlemen, Emma just won the most prestigious sustainable fashion competition in the world. She's worth tens of millions to our company." "And you, Raphael," Theodore said coldly, "will have to make a choice. Your obsession with this woman is clouding your judgment." The silence in the room was deafening. "What kind of choice?" Raphael asked, though he already knew the answer. "The family business or Emma Santos? You can't have both." Emma felt her world collapse again. She looked at Raphael, seeing the anguish in his eyes. "Raphael," she whispered, "you don't have to choose. I understand." "Emma, no. Montgomery is your life, your family. I can't ask you to give that up." Theodore smiled, satisfied. "I see Miss Santos is sensible. Raphael, you have 48 hours to end any association with her." Emma left the room with dignity, but Raphael could see she was breaking inside. Outside, she leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. Once again, the past had come back to destroy her future. But this time, she had something she didn't have 3 years ago. She knew who she really was, and she knew she was worth much more than any company. Emma was organizing her things in the lab when she heard raised voices coming from the meeting room next door. The wall wasn't as thick as it seemed, and she could clearly make out the shareholders' words. "Raphael, you've completely lost your mind." It was the voice of Theodore Montgomery III. "This woman is a calculated risk our company can't afford. She won us $10 million yesterday," Raphael replied, clearly frustrated. "And how many millions will we lose when our traditional clients find out we hired a criminal?" Another shareholder shot back. Emma leaned against the wall without meaning to, trying to listen better. "The Vanderbilt family has already canceled 3 orders," Theodore continued. "The Rothschilds are reconsidering our partnership. You want to destroy 4 generations of tradition over a fling?" "It's not a fling," Raphael exploded. "Emma is talented, honest, and exactly what our company needs to modernize. So you choose her over family?" Theodore's voice dropped dangerously low. "Because that's exactly what's happening, Raphael. Either she goes or you go. And if you leave, Margaret loses her trust fund too. Think carefully about what you're sacrificing." Emma felt her heart stop. Raphael had a sister to protect, family responsibilities. She should never have let him get involved in her troubles. When silence stretched for long seconds in the meeting room, Emma knew Raphael was considering the offer. "I need time to think," he finally said. Emma stepped away from the wall, heartbroken. Time to think meant he was seriously thinking about choosing the company. She hurried down the hall, trying to reach the elevator without being seen, but bumped into Theodore Montgomery III, who was leaving the meeting with a satisfied look. "Ah, Miss Santos herself," he said with a cruel smile. "You just saved me a phone call." "Mr. Montgomery," Emma tried to pass by him. "Don't be so quick," he blocked her path. "I want you to understand one thing. People like you don't belong in our world. You can win all the awards you want, but you'll always be trash trying to pass as gold." Emma stopped and looked him straight in the eye. "You're right," she said in a calm and polite voice. "I really don't belong in your world, luckily." Theodore frowned, not expecting that answer. "You see, Mr. Montgomery," Emma continued, In my world, people help each other when they're struggling. In my world, talent is worth more than a last name. And in my world, no one needs to humiliate others to feel important. She took a step forward. So thank you for reminding me that I wouldn't want to belong to a world where people like you make the rules. Theodore flushed, unsure how to respond to Emma's quiet dignity. You're being rude. I'm being honest, excuse me. Emma walked past him and headed for the elevator, leaving Theodore alone in the hallway, clearly embarrassed to have been confronted with such grace. Inside the elevator, Emma took a deep breath. She couldn't wait to see what Raphael's decision would be. The conversation she had overheard made it clear he had responsibilities bigger than their relationship. At her apartment, Emma sat at the kitchen table with a blank sheet of paper. After a few long minutes, she began to write. Raphael, thank you for reminding me that I don't belong in your world. You were right from the start. We came from different worlds. And I was naive to think that wouldn't matter. I don't want you to sacrifice your family and your company for me. Theodore is right. I'm a risk you can't afford. I'm leaving today. Please don't try to find me. You gave me something I lost 3 years ago, hope, and for that, I will always be grateful. Be happy, Raphael. You deserve someone who can be by your side without bringing complications. Forever grateful, Emma. She folded the letter carefully and left it on the table. Then she took her only suitcase and started packing her few belongings. An hour later, Emma was at the Montgomery Tower reception, handing her badge to Priscilla. Leaving already? Priscilla asked with fake concern. Yes. Emma placed the letter on the desk. Can you please give this to Mr. Whitmore? Of course. Emma took one last look at the golden elevator, the polished marble, the world that had been hers for a few weeks. Then she walked out through the glass doors, carrying only her suitcase and her dignity. From the 40th floor, Raphael watched out the window, unaware that the woman he loved was leaving his life forever, believing he had chosen money and prestige over love. Emma walked through the familiar streets of the Lower East Side, suitcase in hand, but this time it was different. 3 years ago, she had arrived on these streets defeated, invisible, broken. Now, even returning to the same place, she carried something she hadn't before. Purpose. She rented a tiny room in a social shelter for $20 a week, the most she could afford with the money she had saved. The space was small, but it offered something the park never did: privacy and internet connection. That first night, Emma opened her phone and saw hundreds of messages on Instagram. During her time at Montgomery, journalists and fashion fans had discovered her social media, and now she had over 50,000 followers waiting for content. An idea began to form in her mind. The next day, Emma posted her first video. Hi everyone, I'm Emma Santos, and I want to show you that sustainable fashion isn't just for the rich. It's a right for anyone with creativity. She was sitting on the floor of the shelter, with grocery bags, tape, and a needle in her hand. Today we're going to make an evening gown out of grocery bags. Yes, you heard that right, a dress that will cost less than $5 and be more unique than anything from a designer brand. For 20 minutes, Emma showed step by step how to turn plastic bags into an elegant dress. Her skilled hands cut, sewed, and shaped, while she explained each technique simply and with humor. True elegance doesn't come from the price of the clothes, but from the confidence of the person wearing them, she finished, showing the finished dress. The video went viral. In 24 hours, it had 2 million views, 50,000 comments, and was shared by celebrities who support the environment. Emma started the #TrashToTreasure movement, posting daily tutorials: how to make a blazer from old newspapers, turning plastic bottles into luxury bags, ripped jeans turned into an evening skirt. Each video was filmed in the shelter, on the streets, and at community centers. Emma showed that creativity didn't need expensive studios or imported materials. The comments were full of praise. Emma, you saved my wardrobe and my budget. My 12-year-old daughter now wants to be a sustainable designer because of you. You prove that real talent doesn't need a rich company behind it. In 2 weeks, Emma had 500,000 followers. Small brands started offering partnerships. An editor proposed a book about sustainable fashion. But the best part was the personal messages. Emma, I'm a single mother, and your tips helped me dress my kids with dignity. I was unemployed and started selling the pieces I learned to make from you. Now I have my own online store. Emma realized she had found her true purpose, making fashion accessible to everyone. Meanwhile, Raphael was devastated. He spent days searching for Emma, calling every hotel, shelter, and boarding house in Manhattan. When he finally learned about the letter Priscilla had forgotten to deliver for 2 days, it was too late. He read Emma's words with a broken heart. "Thank you for reminding me that I don't belong in your world." She didn't understand, he whispered. "I never chose the company. I was planning to leave." Raphael ran to Washington Square Park, where it all began. But Emma wasn't there. He asked homeless people, street vendors, anyone who might know. "The woman who used to sew here?" said an elderly man selling hot dogs. "She showed up for a few days, but now she's gone. I heard she's famous on the internet." Raphael found Emma's Instagram and watched all the videos, feeling a mix of pride and pain. She was shining, but without him. Emma, in turn, had found a new family at the women's shelter where she now lived. Every afternoon, she taught sewing to the other residents, women who, like her, had lost everything but not their hope. "Emma," said Maria, a Salvadoran immigrant, "you taught us that we can be beautiful without spending money we don't have." "And more importantly," added Sarah, a young mother, "you taught us that our worth doesn't depend on the approval of rich men." Emma smiled. It was true. For the first time in her life, she felt whole without needing anyone's validation. Her sewing classes at the shelter also became content for Instagram. The Trash to Treasure movement grew to 1 million followers. Emma began receiving invitations to speak at universities, documentary proposals, and offers from big brands. But she refused any opportunity that would take her away from her mission, teaching that beauty and dignity are universal rights, not privileges. One night, while editing a new video on how to make accessories from bottle caps, Emma got a message that made her stop. "Emma, I'm the CEO of a small sustainable fashion brand in Brazil. Your techniques saved my business. You changed my life. Thank you for proving that fashion can be a force for social change." Emma smiled and looked around the shelter. Women were sewing quietly, some following her tutorials, others creating their own versions. She had lost Raphael, she had lost Montgomery Tower, she had lost the world of luxury that had been hers for a moment. But she had gained something much greater. The certainty that she didn't need any world beyond the one she was building herself. A world where trash turned into treasure, where creativity beat money, and where a woman who had lost everything discovered she actually had everything she needed inside herself. Across the city, Raphael looked out the window of his empty office, knowing he had lost the only woman he had ever truly loved. And that maybe it was too late to win her back. Raphael was in the Montgomery fashion boardroom, facing 12 stern faces waiting for his final decision. Theodore Montgomery III drummed his fingers impatiently on the mahogany table. "So, Raphael?" Theodore asked sharply. "Have you made your decision about the Santos situation?" Raphael stood slowly, looking at each board member. These were people he had known since childhood, who had shaped his business education, representing 4 generations of family tradition. "Yes, I've made my decision," he said firmly. "Excellent, I'm sure that. I resign as CEO of Montgomery Fashion, effective immediately." The silence in the room was deafening. Theodore went pale. "Have you lost your mind?" Raphael took an envelope from his pocket and placed it on the table. "Rada, this is my formal letter of resignation, and my resignation of any rights to the company's shares." "Raphael, think about what you're doing," shouted another board member. "You're throwing away a fortune." "No," Raphael answered calmly. "I'm choosing true wealth." He walked toward the door. "I'd rather be poor with Emma than rich without her." Theodore stood up quickly. "If you walk out that door, you won't come back. The family won't forgive you." Raphael stopped at the threshold and turned around. "Then it's not really a family, is it? Because a true family would support someone who found love." He left, closing the door behind him forever. For 2 weeks, Raphael searched for Emma tirelessly. He visited every shelter, community center, and charity in Manhattan. Finally, a social worker from the Lower East Side gave him a lead. "The woman who teaches sewing? She's at the Hope Children's Center today. She teaches the orphan kids every Wednesday afternoon." Raphael arrived at the center and heard children laughing from a room upstairs. He quietly went up and stopped at the slightly open door. Emma was sitting on the floor, surrounded by 12 children aged 6 to 12. Each had a plastic needle and pieces of colorful fabric. "Now you're going to make the stitch I taught you last week," Emma said with endless patience. "Remember? Forward, down, pull." "Miss Emma?" shouted a curly-haired girl. "Mine's crooked." "There's no such thing as crooked sewing, Sophia. There's only unique. Every stitch you make has its own personality, just like you." Raphael smiled without meaning to. Even there, sitting on the floor of a community center, Emma radiated the same passion and kindness that had won him over. "Miss Emma," asked a shy boy, "why do you teach this for free? On TV, they say you're famous." Emma paused, choosing her words carefully. "You know, Miguel, the most beautiful thing about knowing how to do something special is being able to share that knowledge. When I teach you, you learn, but I learn too. I learn there's beauty in everything, and everyone deserves to feel special." "Even us?" asked Sophia. "Even without a family?" Emma pulled her into a hug. "Especially you, because you're brave, strong, and have huge hearts. And now you'll also know how to make beautiful things with your own hands." Raphael felt tears well up in his eyes. There was the woman he loved, changing the lives of children society had forgotten. When the class ended and the kids ran off to snack time, Raphael stepped into the room. Emma looked up and froze. "Raphael, how did you find me?" "I looked for you all over New York," he said, coming closer slowly. "Emma, I need to tell you something. If you came to convince me to go back to Montgomery." "I left Montgomery." Emma's eyes widened. "What?" Raphael knelt down on the floor beside her. "I quit everything, the company, the shares, the money, all of it." Raphael, "No, your family, your life." "My life is you," he interrupted her. "Emma, I never chose the company. I was trying to find a way to protect both you and Montgomery at the same time, but I realized I was being cowardly." Tears started to run down Emma's face. "But what about Margaret and your future?" "Margaret supports me. She said she'd rather have a happy poor brother than a rich and miserable one. And my future," he took her hands, "my future only makes sense if you're in it." "Raphael, forgive me for realizing too late that you're who I always wanted. Not the famous designer, not the award winner, but you. The woman who turns trash into art, who teaches children with endless patience, who has the courage to start over as many times as needed." Emma openly cried now. "I love you," Raphael continued, "and I want to build something new with you, something ours, something that represents everything we believe in." "What kind of something?" Raphael smiled. "A truly sustainable fashion brand. For people like those kids. For people like you were 3 years ago. Affordable luxury, conscious fashion, beauty for everyone." Emma looked at him deeply. "Are you sure? Because it won't be easy. It'll be a lot of work, little money at first, a lot of risk." "I'm absolutely sure." They kissed right there on the classroom floor, while the children's drawings on the walls witnessed the rebirth of a love that had overcome money, tradition, and fear. In the weeks that followed, Raphael and Emma created Ecolux, a brand that combined sustainable techniques with accessible design. They worked 16 hours a day in a small Brooklyn studio, funded by Raphael's last dollars and Emma's digital content contracts. The chemistry between them was clear. Raphael handled the business side while Emma created, but they constantly shared ideas, laughed together, and supported each other through tough times. "Are you sure you don't miss the old life?" Emma asked one night as they worked late. "The only thing I miss is having met you sooner," Raphael said, kissing her forehead. But their peace would be brutally interrupted. One morning, while having coffee at the studio, they got an unexpected call. "Emma Santos," said a familiar, hated voice. "Veronica." "Darling, I heard you and your ex-boyfriend are playing at being business people. How charming. What do you want?" "I want to propose a duel, a final one, at the next New York Fashion Week. Blackwell Empire versus, what do you call it? Ecolux?" She laughed scornfully. Raphael grabbed the phone. "Veronica, what kind of duel?" "A simultaneous fashion show, same night, opposite stages at Lincoln Center. Let's see who the real queen of fashion is. The winner takes it all. Contracts, clients, industry respect. The loser, well, the loser disappears from the fashion world forever." Emma and Raphael looked at each other. It was risky. Ecolux was only 2 months old, up against Veronica's well-established empire. "I accept," Emma said. Excellent. Get ready to be publicly humiliated. We'll prove that real talent beats your hippie philosophy of saving the world. When Veronica hung up, Raphael hugged Emma. Are you sure about this? I am. It's time to show the world that true love and real talent always beat greed and lies. They had 6 weeks to create the most important collection of their lives. Lincoln Center had never seen a night like this. 2 parallel stages dominated the space, literally dividing the Fashion Week audience. On one side, the golden, flashy colors of Blackwell Empire. On the other, earthy, natural tones representing Ecolux. Celebrities, fashion critics, investors, and influencers filled every seat. Bets were flying on who would win the most anticipated showdown of the decade. Veronica was radiant in her VIP box, wearing an outfit worth more than a luxury car. Her empire had grown massively over the last 3 years, and she was absolutely sure she would crush Emma for good. On the other side, Emma took a deep breath backstage in Ecolux's makeshift area. Raphael held her trembling hands. Are you ready? He asked. Never been more ready in my life, she replied, looking at the 15 looks from the From Trash to Dreams collection hanging behind her. The first show was Blackwell Empire. Models walked wearing extravagant creations, expensive fabrics, dazzling jewelry. It was pure luxury and showiness. The crowd clapped politely, impressed by the flawless technique, but with no real emotion. Then it was Emma's turn. The lights went completely dark. A spotlight revealed Emma in the center of the stage, wearing a simple jumpsuit made from recycled newspapers. This collection, she began in a steady voice, tells the story of all the people society considers disposable. It's for those who have lost everything and found hope again. The first model came out wearing an outfit called The Fall, torn, dark fabrics symbolizing the moment everything collapses. But as she walked, small LED lights sewn into the outfit started to glow, representing sparks of hope. The second piece, The Awakening, showed how creativity comes from need. A dress made entirely from clear plastic packaging that under special lights reflected like diamonds. The Fight followed, a blazer and skirt made from patches of different fabrics, each patch telling a story of resistance and adaptation. The audience started leaning forward, captivated by the visual story unfolding. The discovery showed an outfit that changed shape as the model moved, made with materials that expanded and contracted, symbolizing self-awareness. Tears were already falling on faces in the front row. The rebirth brought vibrant colors emerging from a neutral base, a dress that literally blossomed as the model walked, with fabric petals opening with each step. But it was the final look that broke every heart in the room. True Love was a wedding dress made from the same blue garbage bag Emma had worn on her first meeting with Raphael at Washington Square Park. But now, transformed by techniques she had perfected over the years, it looked like a waterfall of liquid satin. The model wearing it was Margaret, Raphael's sister, who had insisted on taking part to support the couple. When Margaret reached the end of the runway, Emma went on stage and began to tell the real story behind each piece. This dress, she said, gently touching the fabric, was made from the same material that kept me warm when I slept on the streets. The same plastic that taught me beauty doesn't come from where you're born, but from what you choose to create. The audience was in tears. Anna Wintour wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. Influencers stopped filming to take in the moment. Fashion isn't about price, Emma continued. It's about transformation. It's about showing the world that everyone deserves to feel beautiful, valued, and loved. The applause started quietly, but grew like an avalanche. In seconds, 2,000 people were standing, clapping with an intensity that made the floor vibrate. The sound echoed for 10 minutes straight. Veronica watched in disbelief from her VIP box, realizing she had completely lost. That was when FBI agents came up to her stage. Veronica Blackwell, you are under arrest for fraud, forgery, and money laundering. Raphael had handed over all the evidence collected by the private detective to the authorities the week before, timing the arrest for the perfect moment. As Veronica was taken away in handcuffs, shouting about injustice, Raphael stepped onto the Ecolux stage and took the microphone. Emma Santos, he said, kneeling on the stage before thousands of people, you changed my life, changed this world, and now I want you to change my future too. He pulled a ring from his pocket, simple, made from recycled metal with a small stone found on the beach. "Will you marry me and let's change the world together?" Emma covered her face with her hands, sobbing with joy. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Their kiss was captured by hundreds of cameras and became one of the most viral images in fashion history. 2 years later, Central Park was decorated with wildflowers and sustainable fabrics for New York's most anticipated wedding. Emma walked down the makeshift aisle on the grass, wearing a dress made entirely from recycled materials donated by her millions of followers around the world. Ecolux had become a billion-dollar empire, but kept its values. Every piece sold funded social projects, and Emma still taught sewing in underprivileged communities. Now 6 months pregnant, she was in her new studio, teaching a group of teenagers from a local shelter. "Miss Emma," asked a 16-year-old girl, "is it true you used to be homeless?" Emma smiled, gently touching her belly where her first child was growing. "Yes, Carolina, it's true. And you know what I learned? It doesn't matter where you are today. What matters is where you choose to go tomorrow." She looked out the window and saw Raphael talking with investors about expanding Ecolux to Africa. "From homeless to fashion empress," she whispered to herself. "Life always surprises." And while teaching the teens how to turn cardboard boxes into stylish bags, Emma Santos Whitmore smiled, knowing her greatest masterpiece wasn't on the runway. It was in the lives she had touched, the people she had inspired, and the love she had found when she least expected it. What did you think of Emma and Raphael's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to follow all our stories. And don't forget to watch more exciting stories by clicking here on the end screen.